So commitment. I'm here to talk to you about commitment. And in my world, commitments are things that we say yes to, things that we say yes to wholeheartedly, things that we leap into, and maybe things that act as principles or rudders or guides in our lives. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So for me, that story starts, you're going to time travel with me back to when I was 18. I strapped on my very first backpack. I went over to Europe for the very first time, and life was so exciting all of a sudden. You know, I was disconnected. Actually, for a lot of you in the room, you probably can't imagine this, but at that time, no cell phones, no internet online booking, no GPS, none of this technology. So you just sort of show up in a country, you land, no Google Translate, so you act everything out. And I expected to be enchanted by each country and how different it was, and I absolutely was. Every country had its own language, its own color, its own food, its own smells, its own experience. Everything was different. And I just loved how different it was. And that's when I fell in love with traveling. I expected all this difference, but there was one difference that I didn't expect, and that turns into actually the first commitment that I'm going to share with you today. Toilets. I know you always wish your big aha epiphany moments are special things with this kind of view. Mine was with toilets. Toilets were different. It shocked me. Like all my life, toilets had been the same. You know, there is some kind of bowl, some kind of seat, a tank, and a handle. 4 things, toilet, flush, right? And suddenly that wasn't true. And suddenly every country I went to became an adventure of discovering how to flush a toilet. You know, some things you pull from the ceiling, some things you push in the walls, some things you had to put down, some handles you pulled to you, some things you stepped on, some things you had to push in. I mean, it was really quite fascinating. And apparently every postcard that I sent home was about toilets. So my parents were really worried because at the time we weren't calling, yeah? So they were like, okay, well, she's spending a lot of time in the toilet. But for me, it was like, what's going on? This thing that I thought for sure would be the same, it's standard, it's a thing, right? A toilet is not. It's not the same. It's different. And if this can be different, oh my God, can everything be different? Can everything that I think I know to be true actually not be true? Can it just be the thing that I know? And for me, that was the real beginning of my journey. Oh, that's me. Sorry, it's a bad photo, but back then we didn't have really good photos. I sound ancient. And I discovered that there is a difference between, the way and the way that I know. And I was about to embark on this whole journey of discovering that there is always another right answer. There is always another way. If I am stuck in believing that something is a certain thing, I need to stretch out of that. So that's the first commitment that I came to, and that's the first principle that I live my life by. So I'm wondering, are you intentional about the things that you're committed to? Are you intentional about the principles that you live your life by? How have you collected them? Where have you gone to get them? Commitments are different than rules. Rules are imposed upon us, and we are obligated to follow them. Commitments are things that we choose, that we step into, that we honor, and that we use as guides in our own lives. So just ask yourself that question and write a simple answer, yes or no. Am I intentional, in your little notes? So that was the beginning of my absolute love and commitment to travel. It is the thing that I love doing the most in the world. It is the time and the space where I am most myself. And I am in this wonderful, constant place of discovery, of becoming, of learning. When I change the context out there, I actually am able to see and change the context in here. And that's what keeps me going. That's what makes my life full of passion and purpose-driven. So I'm going to take you now to introduce the next commitment. We're going to go together to Paris. You didn't know you were doing all this traveling today. Yay. So I arrive in Paris. I'm brokenhearted. This is between third and fourth year university. Important relationship has ended. You know, school is fine, but I'm not all that enthralled with my program, so I've taken on a second major. There's a lot of life expectations happening right now, who I should be, what I should do. I should probably figure that out. I should become something. And I'm feeling all of this pressure. And I also have these things that I need to reconcile. You know, I've got this thing about needing to be liked, needing to be nice, this crazy belief that I have to be loved in order to feel good and whole and happy. And all of this baggage is with me as I arrive in Paris. I've come to spend the summer to write and to hang out. Turns out, you know, I'm actually bohemian at heart. So this was the way that I was going to heal. And I really was taking a look at a lot of stuff that was just weighing me down. You know, I was so intent on achieving all these things and being an overachiever and being perfect that I was, you know, always in this place of control, never really experiencing my life, but annotating or watching my life. Does that sound familiar? To anybody, you know, so when something happened, you know, in front of me, I would actually comment, oh, that was funny. Instead of actually just laughing and enjoying the moment, someone actually pointed that out to me. They were like, that's an interesting narration. So I have all of this going on, and now I'm on the train. I've taken the overnight ferry from England, and I'm on the train coming into Paris, and it's a, you know, 4 or 5 hour train ride. And it's so cool, as you're taking the train, you can see down all of these streets as you go by. And so I'm imagining, like, all of humanity is happening all at the same time on all of these streets. And on one of these streets, you know, there's some woman exactly my age with these kinds of thoughts and these complexities, and she's Parisian Tania, you know, so I imagine she's sitting on her little balcony, because of course we would have a balcony, and a really nice wrought iron chair with her hands around a café au lait. And in my imagining, she just starts to laugh. And I'm really caught and struck by that visual image, because that's not a knowing that I have of myself. And then all of a sudden I start to panic because I realize the train is arriving into the station and my stuff is everywhere in the car because I've been traveling for so long. So I pick everything up, I throw it in my backpack. And you know, if you're backpacking, you have to be judicious about what you carry with you, right? You don't carry any unnecessary baggage or any unnecessary weight. So the novel that I finished reading gets left, the sweater that's, you know, now too warm gets left. So I'm making these decisions. What am I going to leave on the train, right? And I realize whatever gets left on the train is really left. Like, there's no lost and found. You can't go on anywhere and reclaim this. So this is really, you know, quick decisions. And as I'm deciding that, I sort of thought, I wonder what else I could leave on the train. What about all these things about me that I'm not so happy about? You know, the controlling me, the serious me. Could I just leave her on the train? You know, with everything else. So I decided I'd do that. I just made that decision, grabbed my pack back. I'm not going to be that person anymore. I stepped off the train, and of course, because we're in France, as soon as I step off the train, there's a beautiful fountain and a courtyard and a cafe and cobblestones and dappled sunlight and Parisian people all well-dressed sitting there with their legs crossed. And I decide I'm just going to sit down and have a coffee with them. So I order my café au lait, and I put my hands around my café, and I decide to let the joy just fill me. Oh yeah. Those who know me knew this was going to happen. And I laugh. I just laugh. And I hear my own laugh. And it's warm and it's soft and it's engaging and it's loud. And if any of you ever hear me laugh, it channels right from Paris, right from that moment where I just claimed who I was going to be in that moment. So that's my next commitment. I'm so, like all of you who are tearing up with me right now, thank you. So that's me laughing, as you can tell. I realized that I'm not my context. You know, I can always leave whatever I don't want on the train. Whatever my background is, whatever my experience is, whatever I was told I would be or wouldn't be is irrelevant. I get to choose. I get to choose. And I can leave what I don't want. Everything is a choice. I do not believe that there is such a thing as that's just the way I am, right? So, what are you going to leave? Today, you are going to leave this room. I invite you to leave something right here in this room on your seat. You don't have to go home with it. What is the thing that you don't want anymore? Write it down. Take a moment, write it down. I do believe that changing behavior is kind of like moving house. It's very rare that when you move house, you go back to the old house. You always remember the new destination. And even if you do, even if you forget and you show up at your old house, you don't go in and sit on the couch. Right? You stop, you turn around, you're like, this is not me anymore. It's the same with behavior. You know, you just decide, this is not me anymore. And if you catch yourself doing it, you're like, wow, that was really odd. That's the old home. So fast forward about 10 years. I took this whole idea of choice, of becoming who I wanted to be, of actualizing myself to heart. And I was working in this fantastic, wonderful career. Some of my colleagues are here today. And change management and leadership development. And we're working internationally. We're doing work that we love. All is good, you know. Lots of travel, lots of busy, lots of friends, house, car, great suits, wonderful shoes. It's all great. And I'm traveling and traveling, and everything is super. And I have it all, but at some point it just feels pretty meaningless. I just feel disconnected. I'm not, you know, the kumbaya Tania that everybody hopefully knows and loves. And my sense of like all being right in the world and it being okay if we would just love each other is, you know, really being diminished. And so I'm like this little wilted leaf. So I take myself off, as one does, to Ubud, which is the center of Bali. And if you read Eat, Love, Pray, it's the pray part of that book. And so I journey over and I arrive, you know, at the final destination, crumpled and weary, and the hotel had sent a driver for me. So the driver is there, standing in traditional dress, holding this chalkboard with my name on it. And I have to say, sometimes the most wonderful thing in the world is a chalkboard with your name on it. I was like, that's me. Oh my God, you came for me. And it just began this whole trajectory of rejuvenation. So get in the car, it's about a 1-hour drive into the center of the island. And so we're trying to chat, you know, he doesn't speak very much English, but we're making our way, and I understand that there are children, and I understand that there are chickens, and I understand that life is good, and it's probably pretty basic and pretty hard. And he likes driving a taxi, and that's probably all I learned. But I felt very welcomed, and I felt very held, and I felt very much like I was a treasured guest, and I just met this person. But what I later learned in my week and a half there, doing yoga and eating clean food and just, you know, reconnecting with me, is that that's really the way of the Balinese people. You know, they really have this feeling that we are one, we are of each other. There's no distinction between you or I. So they welcome you because they assume that, you know, we're the same. And so let's have this journey together. So I get to the hotel, and he drops me off, and I just so loved this guy's energy that I said, you know, will you make sure you drive me back, you know, when I'm ready to go home? And he said, yeah, I'll drive you back. So on the way home, you know, we reconnect, and I tell him, you know, I did it. I'm me again. I feel like I'm a part of Bali, you know, I feel like I'm one of your people. And so we had this lovely connection on the way home to the airport, and he dropped me off, and then this horrible, horrible moment happened where he looked at me and he told me that the fare was $50 US. And I was like, crap, I don't have any money on me. I don't have any currency. And I thought that the hotel had paid the transfer. I had no idea that he had expected me to pay. It was after banking hours, couldn't go to the bank, no ATMs at the airport. I'm getting ready to get on an international flight. What do? He gives me his card that has his name and his phone number, his cell number, that's it, no address. He doesn't have a bank. I'm, just looking at him, and he's got this, somewhat doubtful, distressed look on his face. And for him, this probably represented at least a week's salary. This was a significant amount of money. So I was like, look, buddy, I'm going to make it right somehow. I'm sorry. What can I do? And I was about to go on the plane, and he said, okay, but please don't forget you. And I knew he meant don't forget me. So I was like, I won't forget you. I really won't. So you know how this goes. Fast forward time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I can't find a way to get him the money that's easy. You can't mail cash. The hotel doesn't want to be the intermediary. It's not working out. And quite frankly, if I'm honest, by 9 months, I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's like $50. And, he's probably forgotten, and it's such a big deal. And how's it going to matter? And I'll do other good in the world, and that'll make up for it. And, you've been there. You kind of just sort of trade off that moment. And then my brother calls. My brother lived in the UAE at the time, and he's like, hey, I'm going to Bali. And I was like, hey, I have something that needs to be done in Bali. And my brother's pretty used to that kind of thing. So he was like, okay, what is it this time? And I said, there's this guy, and his name is Made, and he's a taxi driver, and all I have is his phone number, and I owe him some money. So can you track him down and, triple his fare and just pay him back? Like, this is bad karma out there right now. So my brother, who is my little brother, and who is eternally wonderful, goes to Bali, calls Made, goes into Ubud, and sends me this picture, which is Made, who had just received, triple his fare, because I figured I owed him some serious interest, And he was so overjoyed, and my brother said, he was just delighted, and, it just felt like I had a way to make all right in the world again, I did good. I honored someone, and imagine the story he's telling, some rich white lady stood me up and left without paying her fare, and then out of the blue, 9 months later, this dude calls, and, I get 3 times the amount, and I'm hoping that's the story he's telling anyway, Maybe he has a CreativeMornings. I don't know. That would be so cool. So I'm in this moment of just yes, it can be kumbaya. We can make it work in the world. And I remember his words, which were, don't forget you. And it just hit me. He didn't make a mistake. He wasn't trying to say, don't forget me. He was saying, don't forget you. Don't forget what you found here. Don't forget what you reconnected to. Don't forget what you believe in. Don't forget to be the person that you said you wanted to stand up and be. So that became the next life commitment that I am sharing with you, which is to be the kind of person that makes other people believe in what is possible. And that's what I grabbed onto that day. And so I'm wondering, what is the one thing that you could put right now, today, or this week, that you could do differently in order to inspire someone's belief in humanity? There must be one thing, one small thing. So just grab those phones, just write it down, make a commitment. One small thing that you could do differently. An apology, an unpaid debt, a hug, a thank you. So that experience really led me to start to focus a lot of my coaching work on the practice of developing presence and being authentic and being really true and staying in the moment and living up, daring to live up to the image of yourself that you would be most proud to realize. And this started to filter through into a lot of my work. And then another holiday. to the Moremi Game Reserve in the Okavango Delta in Botswana. Has anybody been there? No one. Excellent. You all have to go. It is absolutely one of the most fabulous places in the world. Tops my list. It was so excited to be there, so excited to be on safari, so excited because I love elephants, and I was going to see lots of elephants. So on this one particular day, I had made arrangements that we go spend the day with a couple that ran a rescue organization, and they had rescued elephants when they were babies, which are like this big when they're babies, from different circus, 2 different circus companies. And these elephants lived with them kind of like, you know, our cats and dogs do. You know, they were free to roam. They were well cared for, so they decided to stay with their human herd, you know. And so we made a rather large donation to be able to spend the day with them, and just spent the morning observing them, feeling their presence, watching them being elephants, shaking trees and walking along, and it was, you know, all really cool. And after lunch, we all were walking to where they normally lie down under the shade of some trees, and we were all just going to chill there together. And being, you know, in Africa, but being in Botswana is absolutely magical. You know, everything becomes heightened. All your senses, you know, immediately, your instincts, you become more aware. You become more attuned to what's around you. You really feel what's going on. And so I'm in this place of really connecting, you know, to this sense of everything that's happening. It's like both mundane and magical all together in the same moment. And it's amazing to realize that in this, like, it's you know, we can break out the sound music now from the musical Lion King, you know, but it really is that moment where we are all one together. And I'm breathing it in, and then I'm starting to feel, much like you saw a little bit earlier, just a little bit overwhelmed, you know, because it's so magical, and it's so abundant, and it's so overwhelmingly beautiful. And I am just this one teeny tiny small thing in amongst all of this, no more important, no more special than anything else. And I'm having this moment, which is just so beautiful, and then that kind of scares me. You know, I'm sure many of you can identify with this. You know, that peak moment of happiness is sometimes the hardest one to stay present to. It's sometimes the one that makes me feel the most vulnerable. When I'm feeling the most joy, when I'm feeling the most alive, is the time when I really want to disconnect and protect myself and hide so that nobody can touch it and that nobody can hurt it and nobody can, you know, influence it. And I realized I was right on the cusp of doing that, of sort of withdrawing from this glorious experience that I was actually having. So I reached out for my husband's hand, and he was walking beside me, and I held his hand, and I was like, "Oh, help!" And he, you know, just gave it a little squeeze, and it was enough just to help me sort of stay in the moment, stay present, stay here where I am. And that's me. And as I did that, I just relaxed, and I relaxed my body, and then all of a sudden something so magical happened. Something took my other hand. I know. And it was this moment of, you have got to be kidding me. The elephant is holding my hand, you know. And yeah, it was this amazing, incredible experience of connection, of belonging, of being present, of being open. And what flashed into me was that it was only because I had allowed myself to really be vulnerable with how I was feeling, to really stay present, to connect with my husband beside me, that maybe, this is the story I'm choosing to tell because I didn't interview the elephant, but, you know, maybe You know, the elephant just sensed all that and said, hey, I want to belong too. I want to reassure you too. I want to be a part of your tribe. You know, it's not unnatural for elephants to hold trunks or to hold trunk to tail or to caress one another. They're very empathetic, emotional beings. And I was walking along and I realized, you know what? It pays off to be vulnerable and it pays off to go first. This is this beautiful elephant. Yeah, huge. And this is us when we got to the shady spot. Yeah, it was a truly magical day. And what I realized is that we all want to belong, you know? And so even when I'm feeling so vulnerable in my moments, I just drop down and trust that, hey, everybody else wants to belong too. So if I show up, if I go first, if I allow myself to be vulnerable, I allow others to connect to me in that state. I allow them to approach me. And that's how we build connection together. So that certainly informs how I do a lot of my work. My work as a coach and a consultant really deepened then. I realized that I need to show up believing and trusting and loving and connecting first so that everybody else who joins me can do the same. So I'm wondering, here's your next piece of homework. Who can you show up with today? All of you have someone with whom you add one extra little layer. It's not necessarily someone you don't like. It might be someone that you love dearly, but someone that you try and protect yourself from, just a little bit. So my question is, who can you show up with today? Write down that one name. Make that commitment. Okay, it's my last little commitment that I'm sharing with you. We're going back to one of my most favorite places, south of France. I pride myself on the relationships that I maintain and I keep and I treasure with my friends. So one year I called a bunch of girlfriends and I said, let's do this. And we rented this olive mill in the south of France. It was phenomenal. And we decided to spend some time there all hanging out. We would all work in the mornings and then do, you know, adventures in the afternoons. And then in the evenings, we'd all gather around the big table in the garden that was candlelit and starlit and just share stories and enjoy the good life. And what a magical thing this was. And this place, of course, like, because everything in my world in France is like this. Perfect. You know, it's surrounded by lavender fields, and outside the lavender fields are all these vineyards, and outside the vineyard is the little village that we can go to every morning and get our hot croissants first thing in the morning, and it's just perfection. And so as we're settling in, my friend Tish and I, we say, okay, you know, we have to have some champagne to celebrate this moment. Like, this is just champagne worthy, right? So off we go down the road to the vineyard to talk to them about buying wine and champagne for the week. So we show up and we say, hey, you know, we need some things, like we need champagne. And the guy, the vintner was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, champagne. And he was like, uh-huh. And I thought, my God, it's like I've said I need bread, milk, water, you know, the staples. And he was like, mm-hmm. And I was really just kind of shocked by this. And then he said to me, he shared something really important. He said, you know what? In France, we treat champagne very differently than you do in North America. In North America, you buy very large bottles of really poor quality champagne. And you drink them on really big, special, rare events, kind of manically, you know? And I was like, yeah, that's about right. And he said, that's not how we do it here in France. Here in France, we drink champagne every day. We buy high-quality champagne. And we drink champagne to toast the everyday occasions. We don't drink a lot. But we do make sure that it comes in a beautiful glass. And I just thought, what? You drink champagne every day? Okay, that probably wasn't the, the most important part of his message, but that's the part that I got right away. But I really thought, it really stuck with me, His message was, in every day we find something that is worthy of toasting. We don't just toast those big, fancy occasions. We toast the everyday, the mundane, the here and now. And we do it. We actually go and get the glass and pop the course. And champagne is expensive, so it means, you really have to drop down into it being a meaningful moment. And I decided to adopt that as a life commitment right there. I'm not really good at coordinating the slides with my stories, but this is all of us girls, and that's cooking class and drinking champagne. And, what I left with was this question of what if every day that was champagne worthy? And that's not the right slide. Okay. So it should say, toast the everyday, every day. Don't just toast the big, sublime moments, toast the mundane, toast what's happening. I did come home and really put a burden on the household budget by committing to Veuve Clicquot every day at 4 o'clock, and I maintained that for an awfully long time, and I still do in my heart. Where I try every day really to figure out, what is there to toast? What is worthy of that crystal glass, And so that's what I'm going to ask of you right now. If I could pour you a glass of champagne right now, which I so wish I could, what would you toast? What is the thing that you would toast right here, right now? So just write down your little toast. So obviously, for me, travel is the way that I find and I curate my commitments, and I'm wondering what it is that you use to curate yours. Where do you go to find the lessons, to find the things that you want to lean into in your life? I have turned travel, which is my passion now, into part of what I bring into my world. It's my newest commitment. As Max said, transformational travel is now sort of this full, complete circle of bringing leadership coaching and development and finding purpose and stretching into our possibility. And it's something that I enjoy sharing with all of my clients, and those are just some of me up there. But that is my newest commitment, to curate the conversations of discovery that enable fulfillment in other people's lives, because that always enables fulfillment in my life. And so I'm wondering, those are my countries visited so far. I think we're adding 2 more this year. Yay! How will you choose what you say yes to wholeheartedly? What is the passion that you will use to step into? What will you use to act as the compass or the radar in your life? You can reach me here. Social media finds me under Advivum Journeys or Tania Carriere. I'd love to hear from any or all of you, particularly if you're traveling. It would be so cool. This has happened now a few times, to meet up with people while traveling. That is the best. Thank you very much for today, and that's it.
How do you prioritize your commitments? How do you decide which one's at the top of the list, which one sort of like is on the back burner, which one is, I have to consult with so-and-so about it, and so on?
Do you mean work commitments or life commitments or all?
In general.
My husband is giving me some back talk here. He's sending me a text. She doesn't. I'm pretty clear about what makes me happy, what makes me feel most alive, what I most want to contribute to the world. And so, first of all, it has to be, whatever it is, has to be in alignment with that. And that doesn't mean that I don't sometimes do things that are, hard or difficult or, not on the fun list, but they have to be in alignment. There has to be a purpose for why I'm doing it. And I think it is about being really, truly very selfish. We have this worry that selfish is a bad, there's a bad connotation, but I think, as my good friend Lisa reminds me, it means self first. So how is this going to help me actualize myself? Will it further my career? Will it further my relationships? Will it further my friendships? Will it further my personal development? And those are the ways that I try and sort of make decisions and help prioritize different things. And I also just realize, give it up. It is not that important. You are not that important. It is not that important. So we can put a lot of stress on getting a lot of things done, and why? I go back to that safari and I'm like, really? Every morning, everything just wakes up? It's the same for all of us. So I just try and, take my own stress level down a bit.
Hi. I think something that I personally struggle with is connecting work and travel and seeing that as something that I am capable of doing. How did you start your career knowing that that travel was something that you were so passionate about, and actually creating a sustainable sort of business and following that through for your whole life?
Yeah, I didn't. I started off my career, as this consultant, very traditional consultant who absolutely adored and loved travel. And the first thing I negotiated in my employment contract was not a raise, but more time. I just wanted more time to travel. So I think what I did was just commit to this passion and commit to what it brought to me and commit to knowing that somehow that was really valuable to me. I didn't know that what I was collecting were all of these lessons that would really become foundational in how I coach and in how I teach leadership. I had no idea, but as I started to notice that and I started to travel more, I asked myself a question which I'm sure many of you have asked or have heard, if you could do anything in the world, but it was going to be for free, but you loved it so much you would do anyways, what is that thing? And that was my answer. It was travel. I want to travel with people. I want to take you all with me traveling, and we're just going to discover who we are while we do it. And when I answered that, I just put it out there. I didn't make it happen. I just kept knowing that that's what I would most love to do. And then I just started trying. And I tried, and I asked people to join me, and then I asked clients to join me, and then I decided to get really big and brave and make something and offer it, and people showed up, and I just allow it to grow on its own.
Hi, Tania.
Hi.
So first of all, thank you for the talk. This is very topical on a personal note for me. I've just come back from travel in Portugal, and there's some things I kind of found that were different from what I'm expecting. So I found that when we're traveling, we weren't actually travelers, we were more like tourists. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about how people could actually travel more, with a purpose, rather than being a tourist and sightseeing.
Yeah, it's luckily becoming easier, though it is surprisingly challenging. I don't know why it's so complex, but any chance that you have to actually participate in something in the community, whether it's a festival that's going on, or whether, there might be Creative Mornings happening, or there's some fundraisers. That is an excellent way to meet people, by the way. Just buy a ticket to a fundraiser. They always have tickets for sale. Go, show up. I mean, that's how you meet everybody, and you get a meal. So that's even better, But find a way to communicate with people, and don't be afraid to talk. I am not afraid to just talk to somebody in the line and to act out if I don't know the language. Well, now we have Google Translate, so that's so much easier, but it's actually more fun if you have to act it all out. and connect with people. I also try and now, because of this new transformational travel, it's actually my objective to travel and stay places for 3-4 weeks at a time, so that I get to know, really get to know the place, and I get to have my favorite coffee shop and my favorite morning breakfast location. But find a way to connect. There is always an organization that matters to you, that is present wherever you're going.